Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video, I have a special guest I'm excited to introduce that I mentioned a little earlier in the week, and that is Andy with Footy with an Edge. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing great, James, and honestly, really excited to talk to you today, and also say hi to the community. You guys are all legends, and I know some of you have also sort of asked me to come and do this collab, and I'm sure a lot of you have said the same thing to James. So here we are.
Exactly. And tell me a little bit about, just in case people aren't familiar with your channel and all of that. I gotta say, I've heard a lot recently, and one of the reasons people were asking for the collaborations was a little bit of that takedown of a certain athletic video that was posted that I took a massive issue with. And I think people noticed that there was a couple people calling that out, and you were one of the other ones doing so. So tell me a little about your channel and history and all of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been a lot of notoriety going around with that one video, but guys, we've been doing the same things even before that, and we'll be doing the same things even after that. So
Yeah.
for me, I kind of started the channel because I always felt like football YouTube was generally very reactionary. It was a lot of like, oh, this guy played well today, let's give him a lifetime contract. This guy was crap today, so let's sell him immediately, right? And that's kind of the reactionary takes most of us fans have. But I always felt like, why, right? I felt like, okay, Luke Shaw was crap today. Why was he crap? Luke Shaw was
Mhm.
good today. Why was he good? Right? Tell me more than just at the surface level, because I can just see that with the eye test myself. That okay, he was good or he was bad. So that was the kind of gap that I was trying to fill, specifically with kind of stats and tactics. And that athletic video was just a natural evolution of that happening, right? Because I saw JJ Bull spewing a lot of nonsense, let's say. And it's not just his fault, it's the entire production team that was
Mhm.
making that video. Let's be honest. He was just the face of it. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. James, you've watched United as close as I have. We
Yep.
barely take long shots. Long shots
Yep.
used to be a thing we used to do a lot, like maybe during Ollie and other managers, but this wasn't something we were doing. So that's the gap that I felt like I needed to close. And obviously, you can find me on YouTube, guys, much like James. And I'm trying to go make videos as much as possible, but definitely not as consistent as James over here.
Yes, and Footy with an Edge, and the link will be down below to your channel as well. But yes, you're preaching to the choir here, and I think a lot of my community will appreciate that. Now, outside of a few very reactionary moments that we all have and when emotional, especially since I do lives before and after games. There are moments. I've got my moments, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. We've all got our moments, but usually I try to settle in and provide kind of the same, hopefully, level framework as you. And that's what I think is going to make this a very good discussion. And I think it's coming at the right time as well, given that United have won 3 games in a row. And there was clamor for the sacking of the manager just a few weeks prior. We were relegation form, all sorts of crazy things that were being said out there. And that leads me to question number one. I made a lot of videos like every week on this topic, on stats, on understanding them and why these things matter. But you're one of the people, one of the very, very few people who was quite confident in Ruben Amorim despite the early poor results, the outcomes of the game. And I wouldn't even say they were that poor, to be quite honest, but they were not great, not as good as they've been recently. Why did you think that? For you, what was your reasoning behind that, and what kind of inspired you into thinking that way?
Yeah. How much time do you have, James?
As much
Because
as you want.
I, so personally for me, the first thing I want to address is the fact that I never felt like it was 50 games into Ruben Amorim. I always felt like this
Yeah.
season was this season because you know as well as I do the amount of work that Ineos is doing in the background, the amount of work the leadership group within the club is looking at. They saw how many issues we had. We even had Jim Ratcliffe come out in an interview and say, based on wages, how many players does Amorim actually have at his disposal? Because some of our biggest
Yep.
wages were out on loan or in the bomb squad, right? So Amorim has basically a new team this season because even Bruno, yes, Bruno was in this team, Ahmad was in this team, but were they playing as consistently in the positions that they're playing now? Because Bruno has
Yep.
basically learned a new position in the space of 10 games, right? So you're looking at almost a whole new team. And that's why I never looked at it as, oh, 32 points in 34 games or whatever it was that everybody was talking about. And we can't win 2 games in a row and et cetera, and et cetera. Those things did bother me because obviously I want to see my team win. And guys, you have to realize it takes me on a game day anywhere between 10 to 14 hours to make my videos because I also go live after the games. So
Yep.
me to sit here and talk about a team that is losing is painful. So trust me, if anyone's got an
There
incentive,
are rough times.
yeah, if anyone's got an incentive to be upset, it's me. But the reason why I was most confident is because the underlying stats were telling a story that I felt like wasn't being seen anywhere else. Like I would love to, James, don't get me wrong. I would love to be in the background looking at what all 20 teams are doing in training and then come and give you an accurate representation of this is the team that I think is objectively
Yeah.
better. But since I'm in Toronto, you're in Colorado, we can't even go watch a United game most weeks. So the only thing we can do is look at the underlying stats. And if you can please add the table that I was
Yeah.
talking about. So I made a video after game week 7 where I talked about why we will finish in the top 4, right? And the thumbnail even said top 4 guaranteed, which I didn't feel at the time, but obviously this is how YouTube works. But the reason I was looking at that is because we were 10th after beating Sunderland. And during the international break, there was a lot of speculation about, oh, we're going to go and get spanked at Liverpool and we're going to have all these issues, et cetera, et cetera. The reason why I felt confident was I looked at this number right here, right? So if you can see, it's 13.97 XG that we've created in 10 games. That's about 1.4 XG
7 there,
per
right?
game.
That was after 7, right?
Yeah, after game week 7, and that's about 1.4 XG per game. And when you look throughout this table, there's a lot of teams above us that have created less XG than us, right? In fact, if I sort this table by XG only, we were the number 2 in the league in terms of XG after 7 games. And I was like, that's very interesting because I can't remember any previous season when I used to look at these stats where we've actually been, top or second highest in terms of XG. In fact, I'm pretty certain we used to be, overperforming our XG in terms of the position in the table, because
Yep.
we've always been such a big counterattacking team. We haven't looked good on the eye. There's been so many
Yep.
questions, right? Anecdotally about we don't really know what we're going to do when we get to the final third, and players are trying to figure out where their teammates are going to be on the fly. And this was why, because we weren't creating a lot of XG, and this system with Amorim was being able to do that. And that's why I was looking at it and I was like, our XG against seems a little high, but I think the XG matters a lot more. And then I did the comparison to the last 6 seasons. I went all the way back to the 1920 season and I looked at the stats after game week 7 and what they said for where the teams were at game week 7 and where they were at game week 38. And the thing that I found out was most teams that are at the top of the league for XG, and this, by the way, in the last 6 seasons has always been Liverpool and City.
Yep.
And the other thing I realized, because we were about to play Liverpool, is look at how far down this table Liverpool actually is, right? They are 5th,
Yep.
even though they were 2nd in the table after 7 games.
Yep.
They're 5th in terms of XG. And they also had a decently high, XG against, because we're at about 10.37. They're about 9.68.
Yep.
So looking at these numbers, I was like, not only am I confident we can finish in the top 4 after the Sunderland game, I felt pretty good about beating Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
And that's something else that I said. So it's very interesting to say that because you kind of sound like, Rain Man a little bit, where you're like, oh, based on the numbers, this is what I'm seeing. But the truth is, guys, the XG table does not lie, right? And over the
Yep.
course of a season, you might see slight overperformance and slight underperformance. You might see, let's say, outliers where certain teams are massively overperforming their underlying numbers. But for the most part, throughout the league, all 20 teams will kind of perform based on what the expected points say. And that brings me to the next point, which is according to the expected points table, we were actually, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we were
Yep.
6th after 7 games according to expected points. So my prediction at the time was I'm fairly confident we can finish in 4th or 6th, whereas the conversation around the club was about Amorim getting sacked. He's not even a
Yep.
championship level coach. He can't win 2 games. How bad is he compared to all the managers that we had, right? And some people were trying to come in with the positivity saying, oh, we gave Fergie time and he had similar kind of results in his first 50 games. So maybe we should give him time too. And they're like, how dare you, take Fergie's name out of your mouth when you're talking about Amorim and blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, right? And also, you have to realize from the personal side of things, the amount of crap Amorim was getting on a daily basis. I was like, for this guy to stick with his system
Yep.
when things are looking to be so bad, I don't know about you, James, but if I was in his position, I'd be playing Sean Dyche football. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
minute
for
things went
sure.
wrong, right?
And people were
Exactly.
begging for it and saying, just do this, do that. But he was so insistent, I'm gonna do it my way because it's the only way. And because he could
Exactly.
see the things that we could see. And even during that break, both breaks, I know that the people above Ruben Amorim, I'm not saying they look at these exact numbers. They have access to a hell of a lot more data than we do, but they look and said, we think we're gonna be good pretty soon. And I think the thing with these stats and things like XG is that um, they can get a bad name and people look at them and go, oh, it doesn't mean anything. All that matters is your wins, and XG is a pointless stat. But I think people maybe got to understand what that stat actually entails. A team that's high in XG, it's not magic. It's not like some mythical, weird, made up fantasy. XG is a measurement of what's happening. A high XG, all it means is you're getting a lot of goal scoring chances. That's it.
And
You're getting a lot
good
and
quality
good
chances.
quality of goal
Yeah.
scoring chances. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do, right? Someone's going to start putting the ball in the net once you start accumulating a lot of those chances. If you have good forwards, United have good forwards. They bought good players. They bought Cunha and Mbumo, two of the highest overperformers, which is, by the way, not a bad thing to overperform your expected goals. It means you're finishing at a higher rate than
Yeah.
average. Nothing else. That's all it means. So you kind of could just simply look at it and say, well, yeah, obviously we're getting the second most chances per game, good quality chances per game. At some point, the goals will happen. It's gonna sort itself out and all of that. It's not a magical, weird, theoretical number. It's a measurement of what's happening in the real world, right?
And James, I have to apologize. I mentioned earlier that it was 1.4 XG per game. This is after 7 games, so it's actually 2 XG per
Two,
game
yeah,
that we're
yeah,
creating.
huge.
And the interesting thing that I realized is when I went back to look at just last season under Amorim, the XG we were creating per game is around 1.5. So
Yep,
we, in the first 7 games, had already improved 33%
yeah,
on our XG from last season, right? And the other surprising thing, as high as our XG against looks, we were about the same in terms of XG against last season per game. So last season, obviously, we weren't very good defensively. What I saw in the first 7 games was that we massively improved on the offensive side while staying the same on the defensive side. So
yep,
net, that's a huge improvement from the team within like whatever 7 games, right? So
yep,
that's why I was like, this guy is actually doing something. And like you very rightly said, when you see the leadership, right, they're running $1 billion organization. They're not just going to make decisions based on hunches. They're going to
yep,
make decisions based on something they can back the decisions up with. So
yep.
data is what they look to. And this is exactly what they would have been looking at, saying we're creating the chances. Our finishing hasn't been good. And let's, you want to talk about the eye test. That chance that Ahmad missed, that Mbumo cut back to him in the Burnley game, that was a 0.5 XG chance, guys. And
Yeah.
even if you take XG out of it, you and I both know that was a huge chance that he missed, right?
And let's not
And
forget the 2 penalties.
exactly, Bruno's
Yeah,
penalties, and those are also the problem. So when you accumulate all of these things, and also the Brentford red card, which should have been a red
yep,
but wasn't given as a red card, when you
yep,
look at all of these things, and let's not forget Bayindir and Onana and the mistakes they made, you're actually looking at it saying, how are we even at 3 wins after 7 games, considering all the mistakes that we had?
yep,
Right. So I just looked at it net, and I feel like you had a bit of the same hunch, which is
yep,
looks like we're doing well in terms of what the numbers are telling us. It's bound to catch up. Now, if that was going to keep up for like 20 games into the season, I would have said, okay, we have a bigger problem at hand. Maybe we need to look beyond just the numbers. But that early into a season, when we've just changed our entire forward line, we've just brought in Bruno, and Ahmad is now consistently playing right wing back, maybe we shouldn't be trigger happy.
yeah, for sure. And I think obviously the recent games are kind of showing that because in in the last 3 games. Now, of course, United have scored more than they did the first 6 games, and they haven't been creating more chances is the funny part. They've actually been creating chances at the exact same rate, but suddenly scoring at a much higher rate. Sometimes it's just
No,
about
we've
taking your chances.
overperformed our XG, right?
Yeah.
Just like we underperformed for so many games. Now in the
Yep.
last 2 games, we've overperformed our XG, and that's going to happen, right?
Yep.
That's what
That's
we were
why it
forecasting.
balances, and you use these numbers to say it. And I think where people can mistake it is like you see these tweets every game. It's like, well, this game it was 2 versus 1.5 XG or something like that. That's probably the worst usage of it, right? Is if you're looking at one game at a time, because there's so much variance. It's over the span of many games, weeks, multiple games, and the more you have, the more it usually ends up leveling out, and that's kind of the usage of it. So I think people get confused by that too, because they'll see a game a team won 3-1 and it's like 0.5 to 2, and they're like, well, this is a useless stat. But
Yeah.
you expect that variance when you understand it. So you expect when it's underperforming that at times it's going to end up matching up as well the other way and balance out in the end. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And there was a lot of stats. I mean, even beyond those, there's a lot of other things you can look at to inspire there. But you mentioned as well a lot of players playing different positions, going into different roles and things like that. And some of those were questionable. Some of those people have really wondered about. Ahmad, for example, big debates last season. What the hell, putting our best forward, this great talent and sticking him at wing back as if it's like, an insult to play wing back or something. And,
Yeah.
things like that. But I actually think, and I think you do as well, that the system is benefiting quite a few players right now and even giving them more and more chances. Even Mbumo, for example, is actually getting more chances per game than he was getting at Brentford by some margin as well.
Yeah.
But who do you think has benefited the most from playing in this system at this point?
Yeah, I want to preface my answer, James, by saying it's easy to dislike or hate something you don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Amorim's 3-4-3 is something people didn't understand coming into this season, even though
Yep.
we had half a season of evidence of him doing the same thing with different profiles of players. And so I think when they looked at Bruno, and this is me included, by the way, I'm not claiming to be some expert of Amorim. I'm not part of the coaching staff, so I have to kind of learn based on evidence. We didn't think Bruno could work as a central midfielder. We didn't think Casemiro on one leg could work as a central midfielder. We didn't think Ahmad would be very good because we were worried about his defensive outputs. And we thought maybe Cunha and Mbumo were going to be very good, but when they started out the season underperforming their XG. So there were a lot of questions about how they were going to fit into this team. One thing I want to say, guys, because this is a stick that Amorim gets beaten with quite often, is, tell me one player he's improved, right? I'll tell you 3 players he's improved, guys. He's improved Bruno Fernandes after being one of the best creative midfielders of the last 6 seasons. He has now turned him into a central midfielder in the space of 9 games. I can't recount one game where he has played a Hollywood pass this season. Tell me one game, guys. You get in the comments. Tell me one game. I'll go rewatch it and I'll apologize. He does not play Hollywood passes anymore. He plays it safe. Something that, people used to praise Odegaard and say, oh, look at how Odegaard keeps, takes care of the ball and doesn't just give it away like Bruno gives it away. Bruno used to give it away, guys, because that was what was required of him. He was required to be a creator, and we had counterattacking players, so he needed to play that Hollywood pass. But now, under Amorim, he has clearly improved him and made him into a central midfielder that can actually take a lot of the defensive work, does have the stamina to cover every blade of grass that is needed. And he's actually doing so well. If you guys have noticed in the last few games, Casemiro is actually going past him and getting to the touchline and playing, as our left winger at times. So all of that only happens if Amorim can get the right instructions across to Bruno, and we're seeing that. Speaking of Bruno, I think Casemiro has also gotten better. A five-time Champions League winning midfielder, guys, can you believe it or not, has gotten better. And I think some of that has to do with the physical training that he's put him through as well. I think he's gotten a lot leaner, and he looks a little bit fitter. And let's not forget his game management in terms of how many minutes he's giving Casemiro is also really good, because he didn't play him in the City game because he was worried about him overexerting himself. He takes him off around the 60th minute almost every game to make sure that we get good 60 minutes out of Casemiro instead of getting, bad 90 minutes out of Ugarte, right? And Ahmad is the other player. If you guys want a specific example, go watch the first time Gakpo hit the post in the Liverpool game when he got the ball, and you see Ahmad like basically throwing his body and just he falls over trying to stop that ball from getting into Ahmad, right, or getting into Gakpo. And that's the type of defensive work rate that we saw from Ahmad before. Like he's been more of a player that goes and presses
Yep.
really well. So initiating the press in that sense, he's really good. But in terms of tracking back or tracking his runner, he hasn't been very good. But I've seen him improve on that significantly this season in terms of the defensive output that he's putting in. And then in general, the whole team now looks like a team, right? It doesn't look like 11 players anymore playing for themselves, which is what we had
Yep.
with Garnacho, which is what we had with Antony, which is what we had with Rashford. So, even getting rid of the bomb squad itself is a big improvement to the team, but the system seems to be benefiting all the players because they're playing for each other. You'll see Cunha doing defensive work. You'll also see Luke Shaw being at left wing sometimes
Yeah.
from left center back, right? So Amorim's system has improved the whole team in general, but specifically the midfielders and the right wing back role, I've seen big improvements in.
For sure. And I think another player who's obviously stood out a lot this season is Matthijs de Ligt, in that he's really been able to, because I thought last season it was okay from him now and then, but he's really in this role where he's being asked as a center back to be so much more aggressive. I think it's really suiting his mentality, his want to really be combative, to fight and to get in there, because he's got such a good attitude for that and a good inclination, and the system seems to be fitting him practically perfectly and asking him to step up, to be aggressive, to make tackles in the midfield, to follow up the pitch, to be a real hard-nosed defender in a lot of ways, rather than just kind of put her around the back or something like that. So some big improvements there. And again, even though they haven't been at this team prior to this season, as I was saying before, I really think with Mbumo, for example, it's now that he's scoring, people are seeing it more and more. But for example, Mbumo's touches in the final third, chances in the final third, and the expected goals he's accumulating is at a much higher rate than he was getting at Brentford, where he scored a lot of goals last season. And it's working so well. We can see the way that the build-up patterns, the attacking patterns are working, that are getting Mbumo and Ahmad up 2-on-1 against fullbacks constantly, and getting him in these opportunities where he can just beat somebody, and finding those spaces. And it's giving him a lot of chance. Not saying he's not working hard, because he works very, very hard as well within it. But like you said, I completely agree in that the fact it's like, because the system requires a lot, and I think this is why it's taken time. It does require a lot. It requires a lot of understanding. It requires a lot of intuitive joint movements. It's not a lot of sit in one position, hit the ball long, then everybody runs.
It's collective responsibility, right?
Yes.
It's collective responsibility. That's why when we talk about the Amorim midfield, it's not just Bruno and Casemiro.
Yep.
It also includes the left and right center back. It also includes the 2 10s. So it's actually 6 midfielders, right? That could be playing at any time in that midfield. And what James really brought up, a really good point, right? I don't think if many of our squad has ever played in a back three before, right? Maguire has played it. Luke Shaw has played it. They've both played it for England. But at a club level, it's not that Šeško, I don't think, has played much at the back three, right? Mbumo and Cunha, if I'm not wrong, I don't think Brentford,
season,
maybe a little bit, yeah. But that's not something they've been doing a lot.
And not Bruno,
that's
not
the formation.
Casemiro, not Ahmad,
Exactly. And that's still the formation. The system is still different, right, guys? Let's delineate these two things, right? Just because you start in a back four doesn't mean your system is going to be better. Let's just ask Arne Slot, right? He's playing in a back four, and look at what he's doing. He's sabotaging his own team going out of the EFL Cup, but that's for another podcast. So we need to realize that Amorim has done a lot, and he deserves big credit. And let's not forget the way he brought Lawmans into the team, not rushing him too early in that City game, not bringing him in too early at the perfect time, and he's looking like one of the best keepers in the Premier League right now. So in a lot of ways, Amorim and Amorim's system deserves big credit for where we are right now.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I agree in terms of how it improves the players too, because we're seeing them improve as team players, not just individually. So the next question is this, because this has been certainly a concern that I've had as well. And you kind of looked at it a little in the beginning. While United were scoring, creating a lot more chances, and now we're seeing scoring more goals, the defensive level had not improved by much. And certainly United had conceded too many goals last year, and have conceded too many goals this year, frankly, as well, for us to be comfortable yet about feeling like we're on the right track. We can see how, being very strong defensively and conceding very few goals is such an important factor in things. So the expected goals against is still quite high for United. Do you think we can fix this, and why?
Um, yeah, let me just look into my crystal ball here, James, and I'll give you an exact answer. And in the meantime, let me give you the lottery numbers as well for this
Yeah.
week, because you seem like a nice guy. But no, jokes aside, I just did some math here, and if you want to just put the screen up as well,
Yeah.
we'll talk through it. So I think our expected goals against can improve significantly. And much like, me alongside a few other people within football YouTube, felt like Amorim is going to turn things around in terms of the results. We saw that before the results improved. So
Yep.
I'm telling you right now that the XG against is going to improve before we actually see it massively improving on the table, right?
Yep.
Because right now, I think we have an XG against of 13.5 or something like that across the 9 games that we've played. And what I'm seeing here is if I isolate 3 games out of it, so take this Liverpool game where we had an XG against of 2.76, take this Brentford game where we had an XG against of 2, and take this Man City game where we had an XG against of 2.6. We had 53% of our XG against in these 3 games this
Yep.
season, right?
Yep.
So you take these 3 games out, our XG against per game improves significantly out of the 6 games. Now I know those games don't just disappear, right? We obviously we don't want the Anfield game to disappear because that was a big win for us. But my larger point is the City game was bad for us, right? We made a lot of individual mistakes, and that led to us having a very deflating loss, right? Because I came away from that loss wanting to support Amorim, but I still felt like at no point did we feel like we were going to win this game, right? At best, you take out all the errors, and we're probably drawing that game. Then you looked at the Brentford game again. Some decisions went against us. Bruno missed the penalty, but I still felt deflated because we should have done a lot better in that game. It didn't feel
Yep.
like we were there to fight at the same level that Brentford were. But by the way, that loss doesn't look as bad now, given that they beat the title winners from last year 3-2, right? And that could have been a lot worse as well. They could have lost 4-2, 5-2. Anyways, not talking about Liverpool here. But and then you look at the Liverpool game. In this game, guys, and James, you and I have both analyzed this game. Arne Slot was playing suicidal tactics. He had 8 attackers
All
at
out
one point.
attack.
Go watch that shot that Salah missed against
Yeah.
Lomans that he put wide. We were 7v5 at one point at the back because they had their whole attack at the edge of our box, and somebody was just lobbing balls in, right? It was actually a long ball that went off out to Salah at the back post, and we just didn't have enough players to cover. So are you really blaming Amorim to have that XG against him in a game where the title winners went gung-ho against us at their home ground, where we haven't won in the last 10 years? Like, you put all those variables into perspective. I feel like that game I'm not too worried about. So it's really just 2 games that you have to look at where you're saying the XG against was a big problem, which is the Brentford and the City game. And I did some digging as well, and I looked at this great analysis that Statman Dave just did recently. Right, he's the OG of like stats-based football YouTube. He looked at every single shot that we had against us, guys, and 89% of the shots are coming from individual errors. Right, so mistakes that players are making, whether they're not understanding the system or whether they're just losing their man, right? Like, we can think about the mistake that Bruno made where he let Smith Rowe go on the run against Fulham. And you can think of other mistakes like that. That means 11% of the errors came from the system, which means the system wasn't good enough, or the system got exploited, or the system got played out. So if you take it a step further, like Statman Dave did,
Yep.
if you remove shot events that had both a system error and a player error and just isolate only one or the other, 96% of the shots come from individual errors and only 4% from the system errors. And guess who's at the top of the list, right, for most errors? It's Bruno Fernandes and Luke Shaw. And
Right.
Ugarte is at number 3. But if you isolate that to most errors per 90, you're looking at Ugarte at the top of the list, which again, Mr. Hot Potato, don't want the ball at any point. Makes sense. And it's Kobbie Mainoo who's second, right, per 90. Then it's Bruno, then it's Maguire, then it's Shaw. And you could argue that these are the positions that we kind of knew were problematic, right? Because
Yep.
Bruno's playing in a new position and the amount of attacking output he gives us, like that goal, that assist for Maguire at Anfield is like, we'll forgive all of his sins for that goal, right? But we know that he's going to make these mistakes. And for all of you that want Kobbie to play instead of Bruno, guys, per 90, Kobbie's making more mistakes than Bruno, right? So let's take note of that as well. So in my opinion, yes, XG against has been bad. If you look at the banner, if you look at the cover of the book, it's not a very good cover. But when you start reading the pages, you realize there's actually more nuance involved in this, and there are things that, in terms of mitigating circumstances, that we can look at that are looking a lot better. And also these three guys that make the most mistakes in terms of Bruno, Luke Shaw, and Ugarte, guess what? In the last 3 wins that we've had, all 3 of them have looked a lot better, and they haven't been making that many mistakes. So am I confident that our XG against will go down? Absolutely. Am I confident that Dalot won't suddenly start making the most mistakes in the league, or some other players just won't have, massive howlers in a game? I can't be so sure of that. But system-wise, looks like system isn't the problem, and the players are starting to learn the system, so those errors will also start going down.
For sure. And I think you can obviously tell by, games like Brighton there, Sunderland, the system is when they're set up, they're defending, they're doing the things that they need to do. We tend to limit teams. Even the beginning of the season, Arsenal and Burnley and the Chelsea game and all of that, you can really point to the games where it was bad. You look at Brentford, what was it? It was, really it was 2 long balls over the top against what I think was a really poorly selected team for that game. And that was one game that I think Amorim just got it wrong from a personnel perspective. And it was like, it's not like teams are coming through United and just playing through them and creating chance after chance and dominating these crazy territories, even very good ones like Brighton, like Sunderland, and, teams that have done really well this season. They're not, they're not just stepping through and creating a ton. Brighton's really didn't do much at all, and their 2 chances come from 2 set pieces that at the end of it. The Arsenal game, the biggest chance, almost all of Arsenal's XG came straight off the corner, their first shot of the game that was conceded. And that's another crazy thing too when you look at it from a keeper standpoint. There's an amazing stat that, United, all their losses and everything, but I think the Fulham game, they conceded on the first or second shot of the game, versus the wins, they didn't. And it's been really since, Lamans has come in, now we're not conceding off of a silly chance right away, because you also have factors like the game state. When United concede early and then they have to open up more to try and chase the game, when they concede off a bad shot and they're trying to chase it, well, you can't stay as defensively compact. You're going to make more mistakes because you're constantly trying to chase the game. You have to go more and more, kind of like Liverpool, like you say, they threw all these men forward so then we can go score another goal because they have too many attackers on. We've had that problem to a degree, not to the same extent, where we're chasing, we're going, and then we end up conceding again.
It was in the Burnley game. Just look at the Burnley game too, right?
As well.
Where we conceded 2, and I was watching that game. I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right?
We were controlling it, dominating it. Should have even had more, and then they come out of nowhere. And so it feels individual.
Small thing on sorry, James. Small thing on Lamans as well. I'll say imagine how much more comfortable the center backs feel with him in net, right? And how less panicked they have to be when they're passing the ball back to him or when they're receiving the ball from him, so that if they're getting pressed, they can play it back to him, right? And they know he's going to come claim stuff in the box. Whereas Bayindir was like a scared cat, right, in the net, where he was looking like, man, you asked me to make a mistake, I'll make 5, right? And you could never trust him. So All of these things are telling me that we're going to be much better defensively moving forward.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with you, and I think that as well as United are scoring more goals, they're going to be able to, you can see how difficult it is to play against United when they get compact. Once they have a lead, the ability to be more pragmatic, which by the way is not a change in the way that the system is being played. Once you get a lead, protecting a lead, defending in a bit of a block, going long over the press, reducing risk is not a systemic change. This is not Ruben Amorim finally, after being stupid for 50 games, waking up one day and realizing that after saying the Pope wasn't going to change him, that he was going to change his system because people clamored for it. This is simply a game approach to tactical, flaws in other teams. Everybody goes long against Liverpool, by the way. Everybody's going long against Liverpool, and everybody's succeeding with it. They're not all changing their system just because they're going long a bit more. And I just wanted to mention that because, it's when we look at all of this, we can see the numbers were there. The stats were there. Everything there was pointing to this run of form happening. It's not because something changed that United are suddenly winning games. It's just there's variance, there's execution, there's playing is doing better. And yes, you might have a different game plan game to game in terms of, we have a better keeper on the pitch now who can hit the ball longer. We've got Šeško up front. We know we can do this. Yeah, we have the ability, the choice within a system, which I think people got to confuse. There's always choice within a system to just go long a bit more, reduce our risk because we have more options available to us now while doing the same things we've always been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on.
So the last question I want to ask you here then, and I think I know your answer. And it's the same for me. And before the season, I made this claim that this was going to happen, and I'm sticking through it, and I'm staying with it. Can United get into the top four? Are we going
I
to?
thought you were going to say, can United win the league?
No, people have been asking me that. I'm going, hang on a second. Listen, no, not yet. Okay. There's certain issues in terms of, there's certain issues. And even if we had the right team, there is a time factor. You need time together to keep sorting these issues out. But can we get into the top four? Can we get Champions League? Maybe it's top five because I have a feeling it'll be top five again. Can we do it?
I'll say this, James, with most predictions that are this far out, right, when you're forecasting, you have to give sort of a margin of error, right?
Of course.
And the good thing for United fans is that the margin of error can be positive as well. So do I think we can finish fourth? I think there's a chance we can finish anywhere between second to sixth, right?
Yes.
Based on what I'm seeing today, fourth is where I would like us to be, but we could do better. We could do worse. And if you want to pull up the table again that I wanted to share. So this is what the table looks like today, right? After 9 games, we're sitting in 6th position. And we earlier in the video, we talked about where United were after 7 games. So just 2 games before this, right? We were sitting in 10th. And the expected points table had us in 6th. And guess where we are just 2 games after that prediction? We are in 6th, right? Now, if you look at the expected points table, guys, we are supposed to be in 5th, right? So we are essentially one place lower than where we should be. But if you look at every other team here, right, other than Arsenal, you're looking at Man City, who are in 5th but should be in 2nd. You're looking at Palace, who are in 10th but should be 3rd. Newcastle, who are in 12th but should be 4th. Leeds, who should be who are in 15th but should actually be in 6th place. This is the biggest talking point that nobody's bringing up, right? In terms of expected points. And Bournemouth, guys, look at how massively they're overperforming. But even more surprising than Bournemouth is a little team named Tottenham, who are actually in 11th, I believe that is, if I've got my count right. They should be in 11th, but they are in 3rd in the table, right? That's what Thomas the Frank engine is doing for that team. So my point is, guys, not only are we okay and projected to be in 4th place by the end of the season, based on what we saw just 2 game weeks ago and even earlier on in the season, looks like we are the most predictable team in terms of what the underlying numbers are telling us. And this, going back to our first conversation, this is also what the leadership group is looking at, right? Sir Jim and all the other decision makers at the club are looking at this stuff and saying, listen, looks like this team, this system performs very well according to the expected points table. So if as long as it's telling us that we're going to finish in 4th to 6th, why would we make any other decision other than just backing the manager? And also, Sir Jim's call about keeping him for 3 years doesn't seem so crazy now, does it? Right?
No.
Because he was looking at what we're looking at right now, and we're saying it with our chest that we think it could be anywhere between 2nd to 6th.
Yep.
And for us to get to 2nd, what's it going to take? It's going to take a lot of that overperformance that Mbumo showed, and a lot of the overperformance that Cunha showed in terms of XG. Let's not forget, guys, Benjamin Šeško, also a big overperformer of XG at Leipzig,
Yeah.
right? And he was, I think, he got 27 goals from 17 or 18 XG. And Ekitike was the other way around. He got 19 goals from 24 XG, right? So you're looking at somebody who's a great finisher as well across the front three. And we could definitely do that, but I'm not going to sit here and put my money on it. It's just more something that I'm very confident that we could get into the Champions League places or finish just outside of it, which would be, again, us moving up 9 places at least in the table from last year, which is a big improvement.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, like, as you said, there's always going to be some kind of, you have to make some sort of variances. One of the things that does limit the variance for us that's helpful, no Champions League, no midweek games, fewer on the schedule, reduce the risk of injuries, reduce the risk of strain, reduce the rotation, because changing players introduces more variance and things. So as the season goes on to the second half, a lot of the teams we're going to be competing with, Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, maybe Newcastle, for these positions, they're going to have these extra games. Then the schedule is going to get busier and busier and busier. There's more variance possible with them. There's more possibility of fall off with them. With United, we've seen before, I'm not giving as the exact example but Conte won a league with Chelsea in one game a week, because you can see once you get the numbers there, they tend to be very consistent when you don't have these extra games introducing it. And that's even what threw off a lot of the numbers people are looking at last season, because we were playing in Europe and a lot of the focus was on Europe. Our league performances really suffered. It got way worse as we went into those late rounds of Europa, because we had to rotate, adjust. And there'll be a point where a lot of teams will look and say, all right, we're not winning a title, but we might go and do something in those European competitions. And the focus starts to shift and change, and they have to not give up the Premier League games, but they have to change a little there, where United is going to be consistent. And so I feel
on the
the
flip
same.
side, flip side as well, take a look at what Slot just did in the EFL Cup.
Yeah.
He didn't put almost a single first team player other than Robertson, I think, at center back, because he wanted to get out of it, right? He wanted to get out of the cup, and he wanted more focus on the other competitions. And the same way, and that's the exact reason, James, I said at the beginning, I don't look at this as Amorim's 50th game. I look at it as his 9th game, because last season there were so many mitigating circumstances. If we beat Tottenham and got into the Champions League, nobody would be talking about those games last year.
Correct.
But now we're all focusing on them, or we were before they started winning 3 games in a row, and now everybody's back on the bandwagon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm with you there. I'm with you, and I really do think United will very likely finish in those upper positions. And if they can pull off the ability to add any kind of reinforcement in January, which will be tough, but they will try, that can only add to that. But it's amazing too, in that, like you said, 9 games, whole team has changed as well. The other factor in this is United should improve as the season goes on, not just continue what they're doing now. They should be getting better and better. It's we used to see Ahmad and Mbumo first few games, they were running into each other. We can see that's not a problem anymore. So there's a lot of partnerships, relationships, and all of that will
the dance in the dressing room as well. Yeah,
will develop as the season goes on, including Šeško. That was, by the way, against Brighton, the first time Cunha, Šeško, Mbumo, and Ahmad all started together. First time the whole season. And we expect that to be our strongest lineup. That was the first time that's happened. So, there's more growth, I think, that can happen, more improvements that can happen, and more that we will see in the future. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on.
Right on. All right. Well, I think that'll about do it. So once again, thank you for coming on. And for anybody watching, please make sure to follow over on Footy with an Edge, the channel. The link will be below in the description of this as well. Give them a follow. Check them out over there. What do you got coming up? Anything interesting?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make a video about why Diogo Dallo is the best player in the world. I'm just
Oh
kidding,
boy.
guys. I'm just
I
I'm
won't
just
be
kidding.
watching that.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, guys. But you know what? Given how my predictions are going, I feel like some people will tune in and be like, maybe this guy's onto something,
Maybe
right?
maybe you know
Yeah,
something.
no, he's
Yeah.
not gonna. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to break it to you guys. If Diogo, if you're watching, I don't mean anything personal by this, right? I'm sure you will be. I'm sure those are your aspirations. But I'll just say this, guys. We did another video on my channel as well, where
Yes.
James came in and gave a lot of his transfer wisdom, a lot of his Ineos like backroom strategy about how they're thinking about transfers as well. So do check that out. Also, it should be out today as well. James might be putting his out a little bit earlier than mine, so do go check that out.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Go do that as well. So you get a double dose of all of this and plenty to watch. All right, buddy. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as I said, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, both channels. And we will see you later. Thank you and have a good one.
See ya.